Okay, so you dated this guy, and then you guys broke up, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But what made you? How far into the breakup was it before you started posting content? Because that one that showed up on my For You page, that was like obviously a little bit. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah,
seem like it was that long ago, but
honestly, it was immediately.
and this is recording right now, just so you know too.
Yeah, stress. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of reasons why I posted and why I continued to post, but for the very first one that I posted, my biggest goal was just to like find support because I just felt like I had just been laid off and I hadn't been pursuing music in a meaningful way in a bit, like to the extent that I wanted to. Like I used to do YouTube, I dropped off like doing that. And like just a bunch of things and like it felt like it was almost like he was the only meaning that I had in my life at the time, and then I lost him, and then it felt like I was literally just alone at home doing absolutely nothing, and it felt so overwhelmingly, like, painful and I didn't know there wasn't anything to distract myself with, and not in a responsible way either because of, COVID-19 and everything, and so I didn't really wanna just, like, go out and meet strangers either because that didn't seem right. So I guess I just kind of the first video that I posted was literally the day of the breakup,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I just really wanted to talk to people. I didn't expect for it to be a lot of people. I maybe, like, 1 or 2, girlfriends that are, like, going through the same thing. Yeah, and then from there, I just kind of, like, envisioned there was a point, like, I think literally, like, on day 2 or something, like, of my breakup, I saw a girl post on her TikTok, like, her stages of, like, going through a breakup, but hers, it was only 2 videos, and it was one of them was, or they both were of the same thing. She would,
yeah.
like, prepare a meal before work, then she would go to work and eat the meal, and then it would be her at home, like, taking off her makeup, like, at the end of the day, and, like, in the first video, she was, like, really crying a lot, and you could see, like, the moments, like, within her day where she would just break down, and then the second video, she was, like, just a little bit better, but you could still tell that she was a little bit numb, and then she didn't post anything after that, and I remember feeling like, I really wish that she continued posting. I wish that I could have seen her when she was happy and, like, over the relationship so that I could look ahead and, like, have that hope and, like yeah, so I wanted to do that and, like, be that for other people also.
Real quick, it's related but kind of random. Like, so when you go through something like this, do you not was this just kind of different? Like it hurt to some extent that you weren't even like jumping to like being creative and writing music? Because some people are like that, right? Like whatever their one of their main like outlets, usually they usually jump to that whenever they go through something. Or at least that's how like I am at least. But I know a lot of people like that also.
I absolutely did jump to music.
Okay.
I'm releasing a lot of music soon. I actually have something coming out on the 14th. It's gonna be, like, my first actual release, which I'm, like
Hey, dope.
yeah, and, like, really excited about. I did definitely jump into it. I think that I don't know, music is a combination, um it's like a combination of that passion and, like, that inspiration, but it also includes, like, that discipline to sit down and complete the song and mix the song and, like, do all the things that you need to after it's done to, like, put it out there and everything, and so, I think that's the end that I was getting lazy on while I was in the relationship, and I'm, like, picking it back up and, like, doing all the things now, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So was this obviously it hurt. Wait, first of all, how long did you guys date?
So, we only dated a little bit over 6 months,
Okay.
which
So let me stop you right there really quick.
yeah,
So, because you shouldn't cushion yourself like that, because I've noticed this, because I've talked to a few people now, and they say that they say we only did this, but I would say that you're an adult, so regardless of time, you're entitled to feel how you feel about whoever. So just saying. Anyways, keep going. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, please. I talk forever, so please cut me off and like tell me. But I agree with you. What I was gonna say is that like I've been in relationships uh that have lasted like 5 years. I've been in a relationship where like I moved states with somebody, and for some reason, well, not for some reason, like I know the reason. This particular relationship just felt a lot more of it felt like a lot more loss than any other relationship that I had been. And I think that that is mostly from the way that he treated me, especially it's like I don't know how to, what's that word? I don't know how to use the euphemisms for this, but it literally was, especially because 'cause I've had a lot of abuse and, like, trauma in the past dealing with, like, particularly, like, sexual trauma and all that, and he was the only partner that I had that, like, I didn't even really need to tell him that something was wrong. Like, anytime I was even just a little bit uncomfortable, he would stop. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
like
and, like
very receptive of that like communication that you might have that other people might not have picked up on or cues
right,
and whatnot.
yeah, I think that a lot of times in the moment, other guys were just really, like, not necessarily forceful in any way, but, like, just didn't pay attention to the extent where it ended up really hurting me even
Yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you don't mind me asking, what, not necessarily what you guys broke up, but what led up to you guys like cutting off? Was it just quick? Was it a gradual thing that you guys both kind of saw coming? How did that whole thing work out?
So, I told him very early on in our relationship that I didn't want kids. I
Mm.
told him on our 3rd date
Which is
that,
very like I think that's very good. That's
I think that it's really important to,
yeah,
like, that as soon as possible because that's something that is really meaningful to me and that I feel very strongly about, for me and my life, and, he was always just a little bit too vague about his answer for me to where as our relationship progressed, it felt like, um, if he wasn't sure about that, then he wasn't really sure about me. And it felt I sensed a lack of commitment from him. And so that conversation that we had had about kids in particular, which looking back was actually a conversation about commitment,
mm,
um, had intensified more and more towards the end of the relationship. And I remember I was actually over at his place. Like we had such a great day together. It was like full day. We went plant shopping, like cooked and all the things. And then at the end of the day, we ended up having the conversation about kids again. And I actually broke up with him first. I left crying. He was crying, all of that. And then it was horrible timing because he was gonna go out of town, on, like, a guy's trip to hang out with his friends in Joshua Tree, and so I didn't really get to talk to him until he got back, and when he did, we kind of, like, communicated again and decided that we still wanted to work on things, and then, I was gonna, like, spend the day with him and stay over that night, and I did, and then the day after that, when I came home, he called me, and then he broke up with me. So,
what was I mean, I don't need to know exact conversation, but what was his reasoning? Like, was it just like, I mean, obviously a lot of things. I'm sure it just wasn't one particular
yeah,
thing, right?
well, he said that he actually would want kids, like, if he
Yeah.
had, like, option between, like, the 2, and so, but honestly, again, like, looking back on it because after that, about I wanna say, like, 2 weeks after he broke up with me, he reached out to me or maybe a week after, I'm not sure. He reached out to me and, like, sent me, like, a long email, like, kinda like a goodbye letter, and, like, it was so, like, loving and, like, caring, and, like, I didn't see it felt, like, strange that it was, like, that much care and affection, and like we still couldn't make it work. And so I told him, and this was like really big for me, and like I also kind of regret doing this because I wouldn't, if like going back and thinking about it more, I told him that I would reconsider having kids, and then he kind of, I thought that that would fix things, you know what I mean? Like I thought that would be like the thing that's like, okay, like maybe we can make this work, and it wasn't. It ended up being that he still like wants to figure out what he wants and stuff. And so that's when I kind of discovered that the kids conversation was really a conversation about commitment and being willing to invest in me, essentially.
Yeah. So, man, so I guess I'm gonna be like kind of selfish with this question because it's like, well, it gives you an opportunity to give your perspective, but also it's like because I have a question about a female perspective on this. Obviously, like all of you are different, but like, so with my ex, we were in the same predicament because I wanted kids and she didn't, and it was back and forth. Like at the beginning of our relationship, like at one point we both did, and then we both didn't, and like, all this, right? But it ended up at the end of us, she didn't want them, and I wanted them, and we were stuck in this weird mode because I was kind of like doing what you did on the opposite end, where I was like, okay, like I want kids, but I'd rather be with you. Like if we don't have them, it's not going to kill me. But also, so like I was willing to be like, okay, I'll put that aside. That's fine. I accepted it. But then also from her end, she was like, I'm happy that you're willing to do that for me. But also, I feel bad that I don't want to give, not that she doesn't want to give me something that I want, but that she doesn't want something that is the same as me. And it made her feel guilty as well. So even though we both put in effort, it was like there was still this elephant in the room where it's like it didn't feel awkward. It was like, man, we just couldn't solve it. And it kind of led up to like not conflict, but there was definitely a lot of like weird energy that that just left the residue of. Is that kind of what position you were in when you said, "Oh, like I might reconsider this"?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard because I feel like kids is the one thing, well, not one, it's one, can't have like half of a kid. It's just not possible.
Mm.
So it's just really hard.
Did you like? Did when you told him you were like reconsidering it, were you like genuinely, or you're just like maybe I'll think about it because I really care about this person?
I genuinely, I wouldn't have lied to him.
Wow. Okay.
I think that there are many, many reasons why I don't want kids.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't necessarily want to throw one of them out there because I feel like that makes it all like up for debate. And
Oh
then
yeah,
it's
yeah, of
just,
course.
um,
Hold on. Go
and
back and
really
say
the
that all
most,
again. Say the
what's
last
that?
five. Say the last 5 seconds again because it like the internet chopped off. So I apologize. You don't want to throw
Oh,
it
no,
all
it's
out there.
okay.
One of them out there because it's up for debate.
Yeah, I don't want to throw any one reason out there why I don't want kids because then it puts it all up for debate and then all people will talk about is like why that particular reason is invalid. When
Hmm.
in reality, like the compelling reason that I can think of is like the fact that I shouldn't have to have one.
Yeah, it's your choice. Like it's like you, if you don't want to have kids, you don't want to have kids. Is what I mean.
Right, right. I think that the reason has to come when you want one,
Yeah.
actually. I think that's where the reasoning comes. But oh, I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, but I think that he just had a lot of qualities that it made me feel like if there was one person that it could be tolerable with, it would be him because he would make up for it and make it work in so many different ways. That's how I had idealized it in my mind and had come to that point that I like kind of wanted to compromise on that. But again, I regret doing that because I think that in the end I would have been really unhappy and I would have regretted that decision if I had followed through with it.
Mhm. It's a big man. That's like a big. Not to harp on the kids thing. That's such a crazy thing that you don't think about when you're younger because you're just like,
I absolutely did.
no,
Yeah,
what, but I mean, like, you don't think about it in the sense of like, this is going to be as big of an issue as it really is in relationships. Like, you get older and you're like, like you don't think you're going to marry everyone you date, right? But when you're an adult and you're dating, it's definitely like a topic that comes up, and not for discussion because you don't have with people that you aren't dating seriously, but it's like you do like it does come up as like, oh, are you gonna want kids one day, like this, that, like it's I don't know, it's much more relevant the older you get, I suppose. It's weird.
I can relate to the feeling of discovering as you get older how important that is to some people,
Yeah,
and
there we go.
finding out that like maybe there really aren't as many people like that are eligible and compatible with you, which is okay. But as a result of that like strong opinion and like really controversial choice, uh, at the same time though, on my like personal level, like I do, whenever I do get into a relationship, I envision it leading to marriage or some sort of, maybe even not necessarily marriage, but like a communicated lifelong commitment, um, at some point. Obviously, not in 6 months
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
amount of time,
yeah.
but that's always my intention. So I do think of like really broad, big, things in that relationship, like in that sense, I consider those things. And I think it's interesting that you bring that up because I think that my ex probably had more of a mentality to you where it was like, oh, I'll think about that later, like when I actually am ready to make that kind of commitment. And so I
Yeah,
got overwhelmed with uh, the way that like I was thinking about it now
I
because it's a,
see, I see, I see. Let me ask you
yeah,
something that's kind of random. This doesn't
yeah,
have anything to do with kids, but it's I've been asking a lot of people this for like the last month because I had a conversation with somebody, and like at that point I kind of disagreed with them, but then I started asking like dozens of people, and I've like probably close to 100 people now, like literally what they've thought. Well, I guess more than that if you count social media polls, but I mean in person, a lot of people.
yeah.
So do you think you choose who you fall in love with, or do you think that that just happens on its own?
I think both.
Okay.
I and I think I said this in one of my TikToks actually, where love to me is a combination of an emotional reaction and also a committed choice.
Mhm.
So this is one thing that I actually feel a little bit a little bit salty about still, like about the relationship, like just a little, is I think that some people do expect it to just happen for them,
Mm.
but then how do you combat the times where things are not just happening for you?
Mm.
Like the hard in a relationship, or, when things don't feel as easy and lighthearted and fun, and in anything where there's going to be that much hardship, as like experiencing your life with somebody, you have to have made that decision to have committed to them before you get to that point. And so I think that also, and this is me making so many assumptions, like sometimes I feel badly that like I'm only telling my side of the story. He doesn't even have a TikTok, so I don't think that he has seen anything at all that I'm like posting. Not that I'm like mentioning his name or
Well,
anything,
you're
but
not
like
bashing him either. You haven't said one thing that's like negative about him whatsoever. So don't worry.
okay,
I don't feel like you're on here like super salty, like even though you say you are a little bit, but like I don't
yeah,
I'm just not coming off that way at all, just so you know.
okay, I appreciate that. That makes me feel better. Mm, but yeah, like what I am a little salty about is the fact that I think that he believes that I think he's of the opinion that it'll just happen for him. That one day, like, poof, it'll be magic, and like this woman is gonna just make him want to commit and like give her all the things that like he wished he could feel inspired to give everyone else that he's like been in a relationship with, because he wants to be like a good person. And I don't think that's gonna happen for him in that way. And it makes me sad that I don't think that he's gonna realize that with me. I think he will realize that eventually because people do.
Yeah.
but not now. And the timing of it kind of sucks.
Do you feel like I'm under the impression, if you're saying this, so correct me if I'm wrong, that like because I'm almost in the same school of thought of you as far as like it's like a feeling and choices, right? Do you
Mhm.
feel like because he doesn't necessarily know that yet, or maybe feel, I don't know, maybe he doesn't know that yet, that if he would have noticed that like, hey, the side of the feeling thing was all the way here, if you knew that everything was kind of your choice, you could kind of maybe meet you somewhere in the middle and kind of like you guys could work it out type of thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
That, yeah. But at the same time, it's always nice to idealize things. And I think when a relationship is freshly ended,
Yeah.
it's always, you always think of the ways that it could have worked.
Mm,
And I think that that's your natural instinct to want to improve yourself and improve, the quality of your relationships in the future, which I think is healthy and helps you grow. But at the same time, I can't completely get lost in that and say that it 100% would have worked if he realized that, because I still don't want kids and
it's true.
he still does. Like, and that's such a huge thing. And like, there's a lot to it. It doesn't have to be simplified into like any given one thing. Um, yeah.
No, but that is a big thing though, because that does dictate a lot of stuff, right? Like, like we bring it up as like it's only one thing, and again, not to like stick on that subject only, but
No, it's fine.
like when you make decisions, just we'll just use kids as an example.
Yeah.
The direction that your life goes in is very much governed by that decision, and like certain opportunities someone might feel like they aren't going to get, and others might feel like they want to experience that. Like it's just there's a lot that comes into it. Cause like, man, I had so many conversations about that too. And it's like obviously it's like you say, you're like, it's a big deal. But then like it's hard for both people to like that's kind of like one of those deal breakers. It almost doesn't even matter how you feel about the other person. It's kind of hard to make it work if it's like that, right? Because that's such a big thing. That's the other one would be what, like it would be unfair for you to have kids if you didn't want to have kids, and it would be unfair for him to not have them. And that doesn't have anything to do with you guys being bad people.
Yeah, I remember that actually being something that was in our conversation about kids a lot, because initially I really wanted him to decide that he didn't want kids, and he was unwilling to say that he would never want kids, which made me feel really insecure because it felt like he could break up with me any day and decide that I'm like not worth it that
Yeah.
day anymore. And so I remember him like repeating, it's not fair to like make me like make a decision on this. And every time I was just like, yeah, it's not. And it's also not fair to make me stay, with like the uncertainty. Like it hurts. It really hurts. Like to feel like you're so invested in somebody and they're unsure, you know?
Yeah. So like, man, I can see
Are you
both sides of it.
frozen?
Sorry, did I freeze for a second? Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. So I apologize. I don't know why my internet went down. It's the election. Everything's going crazy right now. I'm just kidding. Um, no. So man, I will say this though. I will say this because I don't know this guy. I'm not defending him. I 100% understand your point. I think you're 100% in the right. Like if you don't want to have kids, like it'd be unfair for you to go have them with somebody just to stay with them. Like that'd be very big of you. That'd be like a very man, big decision to do, right? But also, I'll say this, that from the guy's perspective, I've noticed this growing up that like guys don't want to just have kids with anybody. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying this for conversation. I'm not trying to talk you into getting back with this dude and having kids. Believe me, I promise. But that guys they don't want to just like have kids with anybody. What usually happens is they care about somebody enough to the point to where like, oh, I would want to have a family with this person. And that's what's hard to explain to girls sometimes, because I would assume that they think of having a family even different than that. You know what I mean? But I know from the dude's perspective, that's exactly what it is majority of the time. But it's hard for them to explain that because it comes off in like a selfish way of just like, there's this transaction that I want to get from you because you are who I'm with. And they don't say it like that, but when there's emotions involved, I know it comes off that way very much so, because I think I've worded it wrong in the past before, and it took me a long time to be able to even articulate that to someone that I was with.
Yeah, I completely get that. He did say some variation of that to me at some point. But to be clear, it wasn't that he wanted kids immediately.
Mm,
It was I was pressuring him to decide to not want have kids.
yeah.
Not
Okay.
however you
Yeah.
would
No. Yeah.
phrase. Um, and I think he hadn't thought about it, and then he had decided that, like, eventually in his future, like, maybe 5, 10 years later, he would want kids,
I
and
see.
then
I see. Do you like was that like the I don't know if that was that wasn't the biggest thing. I don't think that was completely the biggest thing, right? What were some other things that were in the same, like, I guess, level of
yeah,
intensity or
yeah, I think that was the biggest thing, but again, like, when a relationship is over and it's still like an open wound, you do that, like, bargaining thing. I think that's one of the grief or whatever
yeah,
of, well, what if I had done this? Like, what if I did this? What if I did this? And
yeah,
so there are a lot of things that I could have done better, but, like, the longer it has been from the relationship, the more clear it becomes that even if I did everything perfectly, it still could have ended.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I
You
think that,
do you
yeah.
go through like phases right now still where it's because I don't know what, dude, honestly, like when girls go through breakups, it's so different than guys. I feel like, because I feel like guys are like this at the beginning. It's just they just go down slowly, consistently, even if they don't show it with their actions, their emotions is down, 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 down until they hit rock bottom. Whereas girls, I feel like it's different, like intervals of like being really sad and then being like, okay, I can deal with this. I'm really strong. And then being like super pissed off and like they go through everything all at once, whereas guys go through it in much longer phases.
I think that a big reason for that is probably society's conditioning of expectation on genders, where females, I think, are much more allowed to just experience and express their emotions as they come.
Hmm.
And men are kind of expected to have like this stone wall that will like slowly deteriorate over time.
It's a good
Um,
perspective to have on it.
yeah, I could be wrong, but yeah, that's how, kind of how I imagine it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm definitely going through a little bit of like a roller coaster right now, but I think that it's upward trending. And I don't think that I would have made any of my TikToks if I didn't truly believe that like I will be happy and completely whole again.
Oh, without a doubt. D-
Yeah.
do you feel like, do you still have days where, like, do you have like comfort days where you're just like, I'm gonna be a lazy piece of crap today and I'm just gonna lay in bed all day and watch TikTok basically?
I have right now I'm so excited about the momentum that I'm getting with my TikTok that like I feel more hopeful than ever through my music. And so right now I'm really busy and like really, really trying so hard to make that work that I think that's almost my distraction right now. And so I spend so many hours, mixing a song or like writing songs and doing things like this where like I'm interviewing or like
Yeah.
doing something cool or like even just talking to the people that like I met on TikTok. So I won't say that I have entire days where like I allow myself to feel sad and all those things, but I do let myself feel my emotions as they come, and I've definitely like still cried like in the past few days, like
Normal. You
I think
should.
the other day I was listening to Justin Bieber's Lonely performance on SNL. Like it
It's
made
very
me
good.
so good. And like I literally started like bawling like while I was watching this, and it was like lunchtime and I was just like, okay, I gotta like pull myself together. Like, yeah.
just it's funny that you bring that performance because like I'm not like a obviously like I don't fall into that demographic that's like a typical Justin Bieber fan because I'm really not. And like obviously his music in the past, like you're like, okay, there's a team of like really amazing people producing songs that are just like so ridiculously catchy. But like, and obviously this song is like that too, because I don't know how much he went into like the writing, actually like putting it together. But his performance of it, I was like, this is like the best, like to me, like the best performance I've ever seen from him, like ever, ever.
Back to like what I was saying before, that like the best art comes from like the most authentic and like honest place, and you can tell that that song was just so honest and so vulnerable, and there's something really beautiful about that.
I like it. Like, so like, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I also like it because for being such a stripped down song, or at least for part of it, it's super, super dynamic. Like, not to make this about music, but it's very dynamic because he has like so many cracks in his voice and like just like the slight yodeling through it, and like the lyrics don't entirely match the melody is very, I don't know, it's just very different. Actually I like it. I'm not a Justin Bieber fan, but I really enjoy it. Very dynamic for how stripped down it is.
Yeah. I think that this is important for me to say, honestly. Like I am a Justin Bieber fan. And I'm not like, I think that there's some sort of there's a weird shame in admitting that you're like a fan. Like all of a sudden when somebody becomes really, really popular in the music industry, it seems, then they start to get like a lot of criticism. And once they become like too popular for people's comfort, then it becomes like cool to like dislike them.
Mm,
And I never thought, well, I won't say I never. I used to be one of those people. And that's why I feel strongly now about like supporting those artists, because I imagine myself like 5, 10 years from now, and like even like sometimes when I get comments on my TikTok videos that are, there's some people that are so mean, like really, really mean. And like the positivity is overwhelmingly more than any of that. But one negative comment can be so heavy. And like, especially when you're being that vulnerable with people, like it hurts so much sometimes. And so I don't ever want to criticize an artist that's popular just for the sake of like seeming like I'm better than liking them or something like that, you know?
yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. If I was, for me not being the biggest Justin Bieber fan is only because it's hard for me to relate to that, like a lot of his music, but the guy is very, very ridiculously talented. Like
Yeah,
just like over the moon talented. You know what it is though? So I put him into the same category now as like when Kevin Hart, like I always said Drake was like the Kevin Hart of rap. Like Kevin Hart at a certain point, people were like, he's funny, but he's not my type of funny because he wasn't like the typical like hood comedian anymore. He's pretty much like mainstream, but still part of like that black comedy group. But
yeah,
people were like embarrassed to say he was so funny, but he was. And it got to a point where it's undeniable. Same thing with Drake. For a little while, people were like, "I'm not on Drake. He's not really a rapper. He raps, but he's really a singer." But he's undeniable now.
did you hear at that one festival, they thought that Frank Ocean was gonna be there and
Oh,
they
they
off the stage.
how you gonna do that
That
to Drake?
yeah.
Drake's actually a really good performer. I saw Drake in Vegas. I saw him and Migos in Vegas. That dude's a beast. Like live, he's a savage.
So
He's very good. But yeah, anyways, that's why I put Justin Bieber in that category now too, where it's like I'm not a fan of him, but the talent and what he's done, even just as like emotions aside, what you think of his music, just numbers and everything, that guy's like done insane stuff. So, anyways,
yeah, for sure.
anyways, so um, back to this conversation that I'm jumping around a lot. So I had asked you earlier if you thought that love was a choice or if you like don't have any say over it. So this is the way I think of it, and because I want to dive into it more because my opinion on it changes so much that
Yeah.
like I think choices are like the evidence of love, but it doesn't necessarily explain the mechanism that's happening in that algorithm. I think love is the algorithm, evidence is the choices of it, but it doesn't necessarily explain what it is. So the point I'm making is like you could love somebody, right? But only a certain intensity of love will get you to make certain potential choices. Like you wouldn't just say, maybe I'll have kids for just anybody. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like I agree. This is the argument that I make in my head all the time. I'm like, for sure, choices, like you have to commit. Choices have a lot to do with love. Those are very much so like a part of it. But are they more evidence than they are like, it's like, are the choices actually love, or are they just evidence of it? You know what I mean?
I can see what you're saying, and I see where your thought process is. I disagree. I
Uh,
don't that the choice is just evidence of intensity of love.
mm,
I do think that one precedes the other. I think that the choice precedes the intensity of love.
uh,
Um, and the reason that I think this is because have you ever heard that study where I forget who did it, but somebody wanted to know if people liked people who did favors for them. And what they actually found is that the people that did the favors for others ended up liking the people they were doing favors for more
I've heard of
because
this a little bit.
they invested in them and
Okay.
because put forth that like effort to like help them so they liked them more. And I think that it's the same concept, and that's why, people can get divorced or whatever, but you don't divorce your kids because you've put so much towards them without expecting anything in return. The more you put into something, the more loving and passionate you're going to be to that thing that you put work into, and that's just logical. But I think another point to make in that thought process that you're saying is the fact that there are many definitions of love,
Mm.
right? And it varies not only from person to person, but like contextually, I can say I love my best friend, but like I don't want to sleep them with them.
Yeah.
Or I can say I love tacos, you know what I mean? And it's all so different. And I think that it's really interesting. I know in certain languages, like Japanese, they actually have different words for different kinds of love. Like there's like love, and then there's committed love, and they have different words for them. And I think maybe in a sense it's a constriction of our actual language itself that we don't have the separation of those kinds of love. And so sometimes we can get lost in like the oversimplification of like trying to rationalize why it was that this love was like okay and this love wasn't, but they're both called love, and so it's confusing.
It's very true. It's like you've probably, and I don't know about you, but I know me, like there's been times where maybe I've dated a girl and I was like a year into it and like obviously I deeply cared about her, but it wasn't the same way as it was about someone else who I dated for a year, right? But you're still using the same word, you're still giving them the same phrase and you're not lying, but it's
Yeah.
like it definitely means something different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I also just heard something recently too that was like that you have like a different exclusive type of love with every person that you're with. Like you aren't able to just like give them the same whatever it is neurologically that goes on up here. It's not the same for everybody, every person that you're with.
100%. Every single relation, you're an entirely different person in every single relationship that you're in. And that's just honestly, in a way, like that in itself is really beautiful because you're like almost like merging yourself with another person and creating like an entire other entity like of the combination of you two in combination of like you both being independent people yourselves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you feel like so okay. Do you feel like so it's more psychological, like love is more of a psychological thing, it has more emphasis on the psychological than it does like the chemistry or the biological.
You're
Am I breaking up again? Oh, I
yeah,
hate that I broke. Okay, sorry. So for you, you feel like it's more of a like love is more emphasis on the psychological part than it is like the chemistry, biology part. It's like something that you have, it
it's
leans more heavy on having control over it than it does not.
psychological is chemistry. Those
Well, so
are like from our brain.
yeah, but I mean like in the sense of like there are things where it's like I was trying to explain this to somebody. It's like I don't believe in love at first sight. I don't. The
Mm.
truth is though that there are people that you meet that like, and not even just like because you're looking at them and you're like, oh god, this person's so attractive. There are people that you meet that it's just there's something there that you end up having maybe a crush on them after like 5 minutes, and you're like, wow, what's wrong with me? This is weird. You know what I mean? And it's not anything weird where you're like, oh, they just look so amazing. It's just for whatever reason, that's how it is sometimes. And that's something you don't really have control over. Do you know what I mean?
Um,
Or no? It's
I
maybe that's not like that with girls.
don't have control over it because you do. You absolutely do.
Oh
You
no, I don't know.
don't have control over how you like feel in reaction to that person in the moment, but how far you invest in that and deepen that like attraction to that person is completely up to you and to the other person. It has to be a decision on both parts in order for it to be, you know, what a relationship is. But to your point of like meeting somebody and not necessarily being like a physical thing, I still think that there's a component of um chemistry and psychology of observing somebody's body language
Mm,
and demeanor and like the way that they speak. I think that I think what was it, whatever percentage it was of communication is nonverbal.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
there's a lot that you can get from a person and know about a person just from watching the way that they are. And some people can describe and define that as love at first sight. And that doesn't necessarily make that definition wrong for that person. Um, yeah, it all because again, that word love is so malleable and it's so different for everybody and every situation.
So it's like not the vast majority, but I would say about like 70%. This is just obviously anecdotal evidence from what I've seen, what I've listened to, right? But the people that I've talked to, like 70% of the girls, maybe even more, are like in the same school of thought as you. Like they gave me a version of your answer where it's like, but you do have control over it. You don't let yourself go that far. You know what I mean? Whereas the guys, I was like, they kind of agreed with me a little bit more where they're like, I don't know if you have control over it. But so this is a question I want to ask you because what I've found, and maybe this is just me being salty as a guy, is when guys have that perspective where it's like, oh well, we're just not going to let ourselves get that far into it, we get called emotionally unavailable, or they're like, or that we that we're like, oh, they don't want to commit, where it's like, no, it's just a choice. So I feel like we can't. Is that what girls think of us when we do that, or when they say that about us, are they thinking of something else?
Um,
Like what when a guy is emotionally unavailable, or if he's like got commitment issues, like what is the mindset that you see in a guy? Are there things that keep reoccurring? Are there like red flags that pop up? Is it just like,
well, now we're kind of getting into like the debate of like whether or not somebody commits to you, does that make them a bad person?
this is
If
the
they just
discussion, not bad, I don't want to say bad person. I don't want to say bad person. I want to say like, I kind of just want to throw that conversation out on the table because it's like it's good to have girl perspectives on this because like that's half of the conversation. You know what I mean? Like that's they need to be had because guys can't have them
yeah,
alone because we don't know what it looks like from the outside looking in, you know?
yeah. For a guy, that's so hard because again, every situation is different, and I hate if you couldn't already tell. I don't like oversimplifying things because I think that that's dangerous.
Oh
I think that
yeah.
like so much frustration in literally everything in the world comes from, and even that is an oversimplification. And
No, so
like,
let's premise it with this. Just so you know, for me personally, and then I'll say for everyone that's going to listen to this point at this point, I think that we're all adults here, and we know that not everyone thinks in superlatives, and anything that Shay says is not going to be taken as it is a like it's a complete, without a doubt, overblown answer. So I'm not going to think that you're generalizing nothing or anything like that.
and that's not my concern at all. It genuinely is like wanting to give justice to the answer.
I see, I see, I see. Okay, nice.
the for the particular men that like have been emotionally unavailable to me, I think that those people were unsure of themselves, um, and lacked a really strong sense of self identity.
Mm,
And it was probably more of a reflection on that than
yeah.
anything in it itself. And so I think that's where women can get really, really frustrated and, throw out this term of like, oh, he was like emotionally unavailable, and be really upset because they did everything, they like put in all the work and did all the things that they thought that would yield a healthy relationship, and they still didn't get what they were hoping for. And that doesn't make the guy, like we were saying, like a bad person, because it's not even necessarily his fault that he hasn't discovered himself yet, or um hasn't been able to find that core sense of what they want in life, but it also doesn't make it any less painful to the
Yeah,
woman.
without a doubt.
Like,
Without It's a good way of putting that. Like I think I don't remember exactly what you said at the beginning, but kind of like they're still trying to like an indicator of it sometimes is someone who is not sure of themselves. And the reason
mhm,
like I want to ask you that too is just so that because I should say people, but a lot of guys they don't know if they are or they aren't. Like I know guys that have been told that by whether it's a significant other or some through a breakup, whatever it is, and they're like, oh, she told me that I just seemed like I was super emotionally unavailable, and they were just like in shock. They're like, what? Like it's like,
another
yeah,
component of it could be, and again, this is why you can't really oversimplify it, because I'm sure that there are women that have experienced relationships where it's just not in that guy's personality to express emotion in the same way that that particular woman expresses emotion. And so it can feel frustrating that to her it feels like there's a lack of communication, and to him it feels like he's doing everything. So it goes both ways.
yeah, dude. Like that's a great point. Is like the whole. It sounds corny. Everyone says this, but like the whole like love languages thing, like that stuff's real. Not even just the way that you give it, but like the way it needs to be reciprocated and received as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are putting in a lot of effort. They just don't know how to open those doors and like look at what's going on.
Yeah, 100%.
I my ex, she would like it took us like a year and a half to where like she finally and like I'm like a very emotional person and I'm like very passionate, but the way I show it externally and not because I'm embarrassed, it's just I don't know why I just don't do it. I'm not like I don't cry as often as this and that and I don't
Yeah.
whatever and not because I'm embarrassed, it's just not how my body works, but I'm like overly like just very but I'm very emotional, you know what I mean? Whereas her, she might not be as emotional, but externally you would think that she was like 10 times over than me. 'Cause she'd cry a lot and this and that. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, you know? But it
Yeah.
took us like a year and a half to even realize that where she was like, you just seem like a brick wall. And I'm like, no, like what the stuff I'm telling you with my words, I'm giving you every detail of what I feel like. I'm not lying. Like I promise I feel this way. And she
Yeah.
just couldn't get it because I wasn't like sobbing, you know?
Especially you feel like you can't like communicate with that person that you like care about the most. And like you're trying so desperately, like, I just want to tell you, you don't get it. Like,
Yeah, I'm like, dude, I made like 30 videos this month and I, it's like I just made all kinds of content. It's like, look at I'm pouring myself in this stuff. Like
oh,
I don't cry over this type of stuff, you know?
I think I think I'm a crier. I think I've discovered this about myself recently. I think I was really stoic for a long time. And that, like now all of a sudden I'm like allowing myself to process a lot of things that I buried. And now I'm so emotional. And I think the thing that I cry about the most is not being sad. It's when I'm frustrated. Like
Yeah,
that's the emotion that brings out tears. Like, yeah.
dude, that's 100% me. Like, I mean, there's obvious stuff you cry over, someone passes away and stuff like that, right? But
Yeah.
like, that's how I am. Like, the times that as an adult that like I have like really, really cried, it's full on frustration. Like, it is just like to that like level to where it's like, it'd be absurd for you to do something crazy and like break stuff and things like that. But it's like there's nothing left. You're just like it's got to come out somehow, you know.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
I'm also weird though. Like I'm like a glory junkie in the sense of like when I watch like I love boxing and like I love like fighting. So it's like my family like that. My whole family does like combat sports. But like when I watch like these like Mexican boxers come out of nowhere and they win some like giant fight and like change their life. Like I'll tear up over that. Like over like watching them like change their life, you know, because they're on the mic like crying, telling their mom like, "Oh, we made it." Blah, blah, blah. Like I'll get a little tear from that, but I won't get a tear from like I don't know, like like stuff that is pretty in like not I don't know that should probably make other people sad.
Yeah,
As weird as that is.
one of my favorite ever, probably my favorite movie is The Pursuit of Happiness, and it's
Yeah,
end scene where it's like he worked so hard and he finally got it, and it was just like,
yeah. Like I cry more over happy stuff than I do sad stuff.
yeah,
As weird as that is. What so wait, okay, how old are you guys? How far apart were you guys when you like the dude that you were with?
yeah. He is 31 and I'm 26.
Okay, so you guys aren't little kids. Not that okay, if there are any listening to this, I don't mean to say that condescending. I think like early 20s is not little kids, but like definitely not teenagers.
Right, right. We weren't. It wasn't an insignificant relationship.
The tail half of your 20s is definitely like very big decisions and like lots of choices that come along with it.
Yeah.
So being 26 and 31. So man, okay. I could see that. I could see at 31 how he would be, I don't want to say indecisive, but I mean like I know a lot of so I'm 31. I know a lot of guys like that my age that are they don't know what they want and not because they don't have their stuff together, but because I think it's time for rubber to hit the road and a lot of times and they've been dating girls for 2 or 3 years and sometimes they don't want to like press the gas when they know they need to.
Mm.
And they get kind of like instead of trying to sort out what they do want, they're just kind of like, I'm not gonna address it. I'm just gonna let it be there. It's gonna sit there. It's like that trash in the room that they never pick up. It's just boxes, boxes and boxes. You know what I mean?
I don't know if I want to like refer to my relationship as trash.
No, no, not that. Bad analogy, but I used it, you didn't.
Yeah, but
31, that's I guess
yeah,
it's not old.
the struggle of our relationship was the fact that I didn't allow him to like put off the decision or put off,
It's true.
yeah.
You should. I don't man, that's hard. I've been I've been there too. That's a good thing though. I think that is one thing that like guys do need because I'm noticing this as like an adult that like you got to find people. It's like you said he didn't know I sound like I'm on your side, but it's like he didn't know some of the things he needed where it's like I'm realizing that like you got to find a partner that obviously fits all the criteria that you are looking for, but also the things that you need. And like I need somebody that is like going to make me maybe not make decisions like that, but like say no to me or, you know, be more balanced in certain ways that I'm not. Whereas like he probably needed someone to be like, hey, not give him an ultimatum, but you need to make a decision. Like otherwise you're probably never gonna make one.
I honestly, the biggest thing that kind of led to my epiphany of that being like the real issue in our relationship is like thinking back to he's a songwriter also. That's like his thing and like how he makes a living and he's super talented. But I remember we would have conversations about his career because he's a songwriter, but he also like top lines for a bunch of different things. He is himself an artist and has released solo work. He is a producer and a mixer and a master, and he's like, hands in all buckets, like doing all these different things. And I remember having the conversation with him so often where he felt very unfulfilled and frustrated that he wasn't sure about what avenue in music he wanted to pursue most, and he didn't feel confident in no, I don't want to say confident. He didn't feel strongly enough about any of them to like decide that that was the singular thing that he should pursue, but he wanted the success of pursuing one thing
Mm,
wholeheartedly. And he never made I told him, I was like, if that passion isn't the happenstance like there, like it just happens to be there. So for some people it does work like that where it just like falls into place, but it's not always. And I would always tell him, I'm like, if that's not there right now, it never will be until you decide which of those avenues you want to pursue and then just do it and like put all your energy and your time and investment into that one thing if that's what you want, is to pursue like one thing. And he never wanted to make that like between that and like our actual relationship of like him just being like wishy-washy and not really wanting to choose either way, and like feeling overwhelmed with that decision and like waiting for him to all of a sudden become passionate about one of them, or like waiting for just one of them to blow up like just by accident.
This is why, like, I'm not saying all girls need to get married, but I think this is why a majority, the vast majority, vast majority of guys need to be in something serious or get married. Like really, because like guys are lopsided like that. Like many of them, like he has this. I'm not saying talking about him. We'll use somebody else, like random as an example that doesn't exist. Someone else who might be like another guy that might be like that lives
Sure.
that has their career where they feel like that, but they don't even know that they probably live their life like that also. You know what I mean? Because I noticed that like it took me. Well, it didn't even take me. Like I had to be told that in relationships. You know what I mean? That like same
Yeah.
thing. They're like you do all these different things. You got to figure something out, and part of it that like if you want something more, you're gonna have to like narrow it down. And like I guess it's kind of like that in life too,
Yeah.
not just career, but guys don't think like that. But just to write off that point is like, I don't know. I feel like girls could be a lot more, girls do a lot better. Girls can do well on their own still, whereas guys don't do as well on their own. Like, I feel like, this is
That's
100%, like, this sounds so like sexist or whatever, but it's like the truth because like guys are much more like lopsided in their approach to everything, and we get stuck in like the game and not like the game, but I mean um like we can get in the routine and we can figure it out, and we like always want to problem solve, or we always want to give it like you ever like listen to a guy and it's like he don't listen, or you ever talk to a guy and he don't listen, he's trying to give you advice and you just need him to listen. Like I've
yes.
noticed this, right? This is like the problem, right? Because that's like how they think. It's just constant like, oh, it's just everything's there's always a problem to solve. We got to fill in the pieces. We got to do this. And like they need girls to like level them out like that. Cause if they don't, like they'll go crazy and they'll be like 50, 60 and be like, oh, what did I do? I've just been doing all this stuff, but nothing came out of it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. It totally does. I do also I want to say though, because I feel super, super strongly, as I'm sure you do too, like even just like in like the way that you have spoken and like rephrased and everything too. Like I feel very strongly about gender equality. And I think that it's important to recognize anytime that we make a generalization of men and women in that sense, that that could be true of the majority right now, but that truth comes not from a biological and chemical standpoint, that comes from a societal standpoint. So I just want to like throw that out there and
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure
yeah.
that that's clear, and to point out that there are exceptions to that because there are people from both genders who have either overcome or defy the societal norm.
Agreed. I think that I probably and like I agree 100%. I want to ask you like how well not 100% great. Like I agree like 80%, 90%. Like how much do you think that is like a biological thing and just like the way that guys have like evolved, because like it doesn't take that long for like the genome to like slightly pivot in like a bloodline and like make people a particular way. So like the example I use is like if like let's just say your great grandpa like was in the Olympics and nobody in his family before was like an athlete, his grandkids are going to be like at least his grandkids. His kids will probably, but at least his grandkids are going to be like pretty athletic. And that's how quick the genome changes. Or not, I shouldn't say the genome because it's a bit something bigger, but that's how quick things can change, I should say, in a bloodline. So do you think how much of it do you think is like biological to where it's like maybe we're wired? Because I think it's definitely, without a doubt, society has its hand in like the things that it creates, and we mirror a lot of those things. But how much of it do you think is biological? Because I think a lot of it, I think like, but I don't say 80%. But I would say that if I had to give like a ratio, it's probably like 60% of it's biological.
I think we will disagree. And to first, I'll address your point about the athleticism, like in that specific example, and then I'll elaborate why I don't think why it's biological.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In that particular example, you also have to consider even the fact that somebody that's an athlete, then they're obviously going to encourage their children
For
to
sure.
be in athletics. And so people's experiences are what, again, what you do the most is what you're going to be good at, and you're passionate about what you're good at.
For
And
sure.
so those kids are going to be really athletic because they're going to be encouraged to do athletic things from a very young age. They're going to do it a lot. They're going to become good at it. Then they're going to become passionate about it. Um, that could have things to do with biology to a certain extent too in that particular example, because when you look at like the Olympics, you're looking at like the top 1% of athleticism
Yeah.
and of skill and like physical ability, like even just like the height of runners and things like that. Yeah, I'll ramble on for too long if I elaborate on that
No, but you're
even
making
more.
good points. You're making good points.
But in terms of like biology in itself, I think it's also really important to like recognize the history of gender genders and generalizations of genders. For example, like even what I don't even want to say the number because I'm like uneducated, like on the specificity of it. Um, but not too long ago, we were saying that biologically it's proven that women are not as smart as men and
It's
therefore
true.
can't be
I don't mean
sports.
that's true. I mean like the point you're saying is true. Like, yeah.
But yeah, and so I think that even now we're kind of unqualified to say how much of it is biological and how much of it is societal. But I think that if we claim without really knowing like that it's biological, that puts us in danger of suppression and like almost like pigeonholing that gender norm and stereotype, which might or might not like always be a beneficial thing. And so that can become dangerous. I think the true answer to that genuinely is I don't know. And I think that we need to be really comfortable with saying I don't know when we don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you feel about because so my cousin, she's like a beast. She's like she's all into this stuff more than I am. Like obviously this is like interesting topics anyway, right?
Yeah.
Um, but like so I had a conversation with her and we were talking about like how in certain parts like of like culture, especially in California, like there are people that will look down on women who end up just like having kids, not staying at home, not stay at home moms full time, not this, but just like decide that they want to have kids. And like my perspective, obviously from a guy, it's different, but I'm just like equality for me when I think of like genders and like choices is like that you get to do what you want, not necessarily like that being a businesswoman or some whatever is at the top of the totem pole. It's anything could be just as valuable in the life of somebody, but it's like it's the idea of that you need to have that choice. So if you want to choose to put in heck of hours and become the CEO of some company, that's amazing. If you want to
Mhm,
choose to have kids and you stay at home or work at the same whatever,
mhm.
that's amazing too. But like there's girls that I see, I read it, I see on TikTok, see on Twitter that they like put other girls down and think they're throwing their life away. And I'm not saying you think that way because you made it very clear, like you laid out your points very eloquently about like why you don't want kids. So I don't want you to think I'm throwing that on you, but I want to
Well,
know your opinion on it.
totally. I think that you're right, that the true equality is going to be from being able to decide what you want and for all decisions to be respected. But on that same coin, I think we need to realize that two things. One, right now, I think the far bigger problem is actually people putting down women that don't want kids. I think
Mm,
that's a far bigger issue and happens quite a lot more frequently. And I
mm,
think that there's some sort of value that we promise to women only if they have kids. And that is really disheartening, and that needs to be changed and needs
yeah,
to be um, and also, even though the point that you're saying is completely correct and nobody should be put down for their opinions or for the the way that they choose to live their lives, the women that are putting those women down, you also need to realize that those women are coming from a place of being repressed, and they're reacting emotionally from, they're expected to have kids and they
Say
don't
that
have
again
any
because it cut
value
off
to
for a second.
society
They're
unless
acting
they do.
emotionally because of what? Because I want you to get your full thing out.
They're acting, they're emotionally reacting to being suppressed. Um, they they have been told that they don't have value unless they have kids, and there's a kind of anger
Mhm.
in reaction to that, and I've definitely felt, I've been that woman before, even though like now I feel like I can express pretty clearly, I support a woman like that decides to do whatever they want to do. I've definitely been in my younger years that person that's like, oh, like that's so gross, like they're just a stay-at-home mom. And like that comes from a place of anger and frustration that you're not allowed to not be that in that society today as it stands.
I see. I see. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna say I never thought of that, but it's like obviously that doesn't get emphasized in my head when I look at it. To me, it ends up looking like up front. Like I'm glad you said it because up front it does look like it's just a group of girls who probably have some ideology that are just bashing another group of girls for thinking something differently. But it is like common sense that we end up looking past because that comes from somewhere. They're not just picking a random idea and like
Right. And that's
talking
like,
down to people.
yeah, and that's like specifically why I say that that is the issue. And honestly, the parallel that I think of the most when I think about it is, um, the protests and the whole Black Lives Matters movement. Um, there are so many people that are upset about the rioting and are, well, when that was happening. And they put so much emphasis on that, and it doesn't solve the problem. The problem is the racism, not the rioting. That's the source. And
Yeah,
this is a very like a much more mild version of that, where it's like the problem is the suppression. It's not the bashing, it's the suppression to begin with. So
yeah,
we
yeah,
need
yeah.
to hone in on that, and then the other things will follow.
What advice would you give? Because we're closing in on an hour here. That went by so quick. I feel like you've been like super like beast right now. Like you like flew through this thing. Sometimes I would get worried I might have to carry people. I haven't had to yet, but like years back, I've had to do it before. So you've been good.
Thank you.
um, I always try to end it on like, and there's no timeline. Like you can take as long as you want. Don't feel rushed at all.
Okay.
On advice you can give to guys specifically in relationships when they feel like them and their partner are not like when they feel like they can't communicate to their partner like, hey, I'm putting in effort, like how do you not see this? Like a lot of guys feel like that, like I'm trying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but like they take it as like, oh, you just don't care about what I'm doing, or like you don't think I'm trying, you don't want to acknowledge me. But like how should they approach that? Obviously it's different for every girl, but what would you advise them on the first steps?
Yeah. So the very, very first step I think is deciding whether or not that relationship is worth it to you,
Mm,
and whether that's something you really, really want to pursue. Because if it's not, then you're wasting everyone's time. And there's no reason for you to, you know, try to express your feelings to this person because you're not gonna be able to invest everything that they need from you, um, if you don't want it yourself. Um, I guess the second thing is to communicate as much as you can, as much as you possibly can, and in as many ways as possible, because there are so many different ways that people resonate with more. If one way of communicating isn't working for you, maybe talk about it in a different way, try different ways of like approaching it. um, and third, realize that sometimes somebody's trauma is bigger than you. um, and that isn't your fault. And it doesn't make your frustrations less valid. but sometimes no matter what you do, that person is just going to need constant reassurance that you care for them and that you love them. And don't feel frustrated by the frequency that they need that encouragement builds. And as you prove over and over again that you're willing to put in that work and that you're willing to show them and tell them in all those different love languages that you care about them, because that's really the heart of the issue. When a woman is frustrated in that kind of way, they're saying that they for some reason don't feel they don't feel that affection or love for from you, or they're doubting it, and it's not necessarily your fault. You could be doing all the right things, you could genuinely love this person like with all of your heart, but they just need to be told and like shown again and again and again, because trauma is real and sometimes it's so hard to get over, and not every guy is cut out to handle that, depending on the woman and like their particular traumas, and that's okay. But every woman deserves the guy that is cut out for it. So you need to decide, if you are, if you aren't.
That's a very, very good point to like leave off that like point with, is like not everyone's like cut out for like particular type of relationships, right? Like it's just not like people in their past and like what they've gone through, like very, very serious. Not to say that
Mm,
people aren't good enough, but it's like it's a very good point actually.
thank
Um,
you.
this was great, Shay. Like
Yeah.
like plug all your music, and I'm gonna link everything that you have. Like I want you to give it to me in links, and like I'll even update them as you pump stuff out too. But like plug everything away right now.
I would love that so much. So I actually don't have my music out yet, but my first single is coming out in 11 days on November the 14th. Um, and I'm so excited. And once that's released, then I will have an artist profile that you can follow. And that's the best.
Yes,
That honestly, that like over everything that you could possibly do, like following my Spotify will be the number one like helper in like getting streams, because that's how like they're put into like playlists and then all that jazz. I'm so excited just to be able to like, I don't know, reach people or in any kind of emotional way, like with music. That's my biggest passion, my biggest dream. That's like literally the entire reason that I feel like still living. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, I guess I could plug all the other things too. But I have an Instagram, I have a TikTok, I have a YouTube, but like Spotify. Like when that song comes out, follow me on Spotify, please.
definitely. I'll be reposting all that stuff too. And then again, like I'll once it comes out, I'll put the Spotify link in there as well and all this stuff. So and anything you send me, I'll plug it. So guys, make sure whatever's linked in the description right now, and then like Shay's tagged, just go follow her, do all that stuff, and then like regardless of whenever you're watching this. And then also, guys, there is a Patreon that I've been telling you guys about. Some of you guys have been signing up for it. I really appreciate it. I'm not saying you need to, but it does help out smaller creators like myself to get these episodes off the ground. And you guys have been super dope about asking questions and whatnot. So I appreciate that. Shay, thank you so much. Like really.
I appreciate you like having me here, and like I had such a good conversation. This was amazing.
It was cool. It was cool. All right, guys. Like and subscribe or follow wherever you guys are listening to this at. Just do that little button thing where I don't know, whatever's closest to you or whatever. I'm so bad at ending these. It's like I'm so informal about it. But yeah, guys, I appreciate it. We'll hear from you guys next time.